So I'm Amy, and I'm from the Arts Marketing Association, and I am delighted to be moderating this panel this afternoon. We've got Tanya, John and Neil, who will be telling you a bit about themselves shortly. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself. So the Arts Marketing Association started about 25 years ago, and it began as a network of arts marketers who came together because they felt there was a need to professionalise the industry. And then from that, it has evolved into a business where we bring people together at networking events, but we also deliver more formal training and events to help people upskill. I've worked in this sort of industry for about 10 years now, so I've worked in various professional bodies with the network side as well as the upskilling aspect of things. So that's my background, that's where I'm coming from. And I will just hand the clicker on to, there we go, excuse me, to Neil, who will tell you a bit about himself and his background.
Hello, my name is Neil Butler, and my company is called UZ. It's an international arts charity based in Glasgow. It was established in 1994, and in 2010 we changed our focus from being an events-based company, UZ Events, to that one that focused on the making of work and the relationship of the artist with the public, and that company is called UZ Arts. We support artists who work across borders and art forms to create work in public space, that's to say outside conventional venues. We're interested in creating platforms where our artists collaborate together, but also to collaborate with the artists, with the public, to make work. And to achieve this, we organise symposia and workshops and artistic residencies, and we commission and co-produce and distribute work. As we rarely now organise large-scale events and festivals, we rely on partnerships and networks to make and distribute the work that we create. And the two I'm focusing on today are In Situ and Sura Madura. In Situ was created by my organisation and by others in 2003 as a European network to support producers working in public space across art forms and across borders. It's grown from a partnership of 7 organisations in 5 countries to 20 in 12 countries. It was very demanding to set up and maintain, but also very rewarding, and for the partners and for the artists and for our audiences. It has now supported over 200 artists and companies and become significant advocates in its sector, and it's funded through Creative Europe and in Scotland by Creative Scotland and in England by Arts Council England. And this is the artist Olivier Grostet, who creates these buildings. He's a sort of exemplary artist of In Situ. He designs the buildings and he works with the public to create them. The public make the cardboard boxes under his instruction as bricks, and then you have to erect it starting from the top and then tape it together and then lifting the whole thing up and taping it together, lifting it and taping it together. So in the end it takes several hundred people to lift and then carry the building around. The other small network we have is called Sura Madura. It's an artist residency in Sri Lanka that welcomes artists in all art forms to experiment and extend their practice. It's evolved a series of tools to support artists and a program that explores identity and collaboration. Work created in the residency is presented in Sri Lanka through a network of organisations including the University of Visual and Performing Arts in Colombo, the Arts Council of Sri Lanka, and the Colombo Art Biennale. To develop opportunities for English artists to participate and be supported at Sura Madura, we developed a further network of English producers who over the last period have sent 18 artists to Sri Lanka. Sura Madura is funded by Creative Scotland, In Situ, Arts Council England, and local sponsors and organisations. And in addition to presenting work in Sri Lanka, it also presents work through symposia, exhibition and performances throughout the UK and in mainland Europe. Both In Situ and the Sura Madura network started with a common objective. Informal meetings produced an overview of potential partners, the territory, and the funding opportunities to develop and maintain a network and to realise the objective. And that's when the hard work starts.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And now if we just hear a little bit from John, who's coming at it from a slightly different perspective, in that John's poised to launch a network shortly, so he'll be mainly talking at this point about his experiences of being part of a network and how that can help shape what networks should be thinking about in terms of their offer.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, so I'm John Peto from an organisation called the Nerve Centre, which is based in Derry in Northern Ireland. And yeah, my perspective, I'm not sure of the terminology, but I'm really coming here more as a networkee than a networker, somebody from an organisation that's benefited from participation in networks over almost 30 years now, more than we have in terms of leading networks and building networks. But I think there's still some useful insights from that experience for you as well. And we are now building a network across the island of Ireland around Fab Labs and digital fabrication. So the Nerve Centre is an organisation that grew out of a musicians collective that was set up by young people, young rock musicians who wanted a place to practice music, to collectivise and share instruments and recording facilities in a small, very much underserved city, technically within the UK, but a site of conflict as part of the Northern Ireland conflict in the late 1980s. And our location has been key to our participation in networks as well, because I think compared to an awful lot of other organisations, we've had it very easy in networks, because being in a city which, as well as scoring very highly on all sorts of deprivation indices across the UK averages, is also a centre was a centre of one of the sort of key live conflicts within Europe for many years, has meant that we've been a sort of exciting place for people to come and want to partner with and want to include us in networks. So ever since we initiated it as an organisation, we've been approached by people that are keen to network with us, that want to include us in their projects, because we probably hold some attraction to their wider chances of getting funding. They're doing something interesting around post-conflict, around community division. There's a sort of truism around Northern Ireland that the whiff of Semtex is a great aphrodisiac, and you know, we would be quite open in that we've certainly exploited that sort of conflict dimension to what we've done that's brought us into networks. And that's really given us quite a lot of learning and experience over the years as well, because there are pitfalls to being pulled into networking projects that we've learned from. Our work now is focused around various forms of digital technologies. It's grown out of music into cinema, digital fabrication, coding, robotics, and it's all around hands-on immersive experience, using creativity as the sort of common language, and then using various forms of technology as means of exploring that creativity, trying to teach people practical skills around employment, employability, job skills, working within the curriculum in Northern Ireland, developing new A-levels and new GCSEs, which are taught across Northern Ireland around creativity and filmmaking, film-based practice, and working at a community level. So we touch all sorts of networks. We're in musical networks, we're in film networks, we're in cultural networks, and we're in performance venue networks, audience and marketing networks, and work with various ones across Europe. Sometimes you get approached around a networking opportunity, or you see a network which you think is ideal for us and they're really doing things that we're doing. And actually, when you start to work with them and get involved with them, there's a disconnect between what it is the network actually wants and what it is you actually want. And sometimes you can get sort of seduced when you come into a network, because there's a fizz of ideas and energy and all sorts of stuff. And actually, it can lead you away from your core mission, your core purpose. And there's a tension between the amount of effort you put into your managing your relationship or your participation in the network with what you're actually trying to get out of it. And I think it's really important to try and keep that focus on why you're involved in the network. That purpose has to be the purpose that you want to serve. There's also issues that we've come across around networks where for years we would have exploited networks. We wouldn't have put a lot back into networks because, again, we were being approached because we were seen as an attractive partner to work with. We're a low capacity organisation, we're a social enterprise, and we've grown, we've now got more capacity. But for a long time we really milked networks and took what we could from them without putting much back. In recent years we've become a far more contributory partner in the networks that we've worked in, because we've been able to establish that position to do that. But for other partners within those networks, I think there are always tensions around what you're putting in and what you're getting out. And we've had the experience of numerous times in networks of partners that are really quite high maintenance, that are trying to get a lot of information from you, quite a draw on your time. And again, it's around that sort of adherence to your mission and how far you'll let the network draw you away from it. And your motivation around being in that network, sometimes you've got to be very frank and honest and say we're in this network because there's a funding opportunity, and sometimes you're in a network because there's a wider learning opportunity, there's a capacity development that you can do within the organisation, skills building, and it's about you developing capacity within the sector for other people as well. But a couple of times we've had sort of network opportunities that have come to us, and we've sat and looked at it, so if there wasn't funding for this, would we be doing it? And if the answer to that is no, then generally we've tried to move away from that. And I think that's the sort of the final point with networks that we've encountered, is that they can be quite expensive. You know, sometimes you'll be pulled. We're in a European film network which wants to meet bi-monthly in various locations across Europe, which doesn't have a core resource. I mean, how are people able to fund this? And if you can't fund it, and we've been very frank, so that we can't afford to do this. And I think, again, it's about being honest, and sometimes you can get sort of pulled into a network which is possibly operating at a higher level than really you're ready for or able for. And you can be seduced by that and think this is good company to be keeping, but actually, if you're not cutting your cloth according to your means, your sort of dalliance in networks can become quite painful for you and start to cost you money and limit your own development. So just some sort of practical stuff that hopefully we can build on and share later on.
That's great, thank you very much. So yeah, some good points there about how working with other networks is a good way to sometimes spread the workload, but being mindful of how thinly you can spread yourself at the same time. I think what Tanya is going to talk to you about now is her background, which is one of those opportunities where there was an opportunity with a number of people working together for something to happen, and it did. So Tanya, would you like to tell us about that?
Hello, my name is Tanya Santos. I am from Portugal. I'm the founder and manager of Crew Co-work. Crew Co-work is a creative hub that combines a co-working space. Some of the pictures of it are here. It's a co-working space set up for creative activities and combines a co-working space, a designer store, and an art gallery. So basically, we opened in 2012. We have 6 years now in the Porto Arts District, so near the art galleries and the hotspot for what's going on in the city. Well, basically, we provide freelancers and small creative businesses the opportunity of work, of showcase their work and sell their work in the same place. And we also provide a number of services, supporting services for this small business to grow and to thrive in these sectors. Workshops, events, meetups, exhibitions, and networking and social events for these kind of professionals. We have a community of more than 300 people. 40 of them are residents at workspace, and 40 also can be part of our designer store. And I am also a member of the interim committee of European Creative Hubs Network. This network gathers a community of leaders of creative hubs which mainly are creative workspaces of all kind for all kind of professionals of the cultural and creative industries. These workspaces tend to support, inspire, and promote a sense of community between these individuals, between these freelancers and small creative businesses, and facilitate the cross-sector fertilization between them. So normally these creative hubs, like Crew Co-work is one of them, are more mission-led and more, let's say, local impact-oriented. They want to give something back to the community. And the European Creative Hubs Network was a result of a 2-year project funded by Creative Europe. It started in 2016 and it ended a few months ago. It was led by the British Council 6 creative hubs from all Europe. That included 2 hubs from UK, and 1 from Serbia, 1 from Greece, 1 for Germany, and 1 from Spain. And during these 2 years, a lot of activities were promoted to gather these creative hub leaders from all Europe. We made 3 forums around these topics. One on Belgrade, in Athens, and one in Sheffield last year. In these forums, we had like 425 creative hub leaders from 44 countries together in these 3 activities. We also had the 3 skill building workshops for these hub leaders to be more resilient and to build on their skills of managing these organizations. These organizations are normally small organizations with a small annual turnover. So they tend to be some fragile organizations, and this is also a recent phenomenon. This creative hubs explosion in terms of numbers around Europe. It started like 5 years ago and is growing exponentially. So this all kind of new ground for everybody. So these hub leaders have no role models, let's say, to how to manage and to orientate these organizations that support so many individuals and small businesses from this sector. So these activities held during these 2 years helped a lot of these people and their staff and their community members to reach new goals and to work together. So that's one of the results. We also had this peer-to-peer mobility scheme that allowed these hub leaders to travel and to visit other hubs for this peer-to-peer learning, to observe in this local context how they work, how they manage their activities, to know the community they support. And this program had 2 rounds of this scheme. About 40 people traveled from one place to another. Well, we also made a series of publications around the sector and around the challenges of the sector.
Great. Okay, so we started a little bit later than ideal, so I think we'll probably go straight into questions. We have got a range of different organisations in terms of the scope of organisation of members they have in their networks, the stage which they're at in terms of how advanced they are from fairly new to more than 10 years experience of running them. And I would encourage you to take advantage of that. If anybody's got any questions they would like to kick us off with. Some networks are where you are getting income, which might be how you, if you like Tanya to talk about how you encourage people to continue the programme, because you had funding initially, but now you're at a stage where the funding ceased, so that's going to be a particular challenge.
In this stage, so the project is over, and the euphoria and the money. And now we are in transition to the second stage, that is setting up an independent legal entity, an association, with this different core team in the interim committee. And I think you're totally right. It's starting with all this euphoria and fundings and purpose and values. It's I wouldn't say that easy, but maybe easier than the second stage of maintenance of the network. One of the reasons is, yes, like in our case, the interim community members all have these hubs. These hubs, they have to run and to manage, and so we have few time to dedicate to this requiring activity in the network. But also, I would like to say that in our case, I think we are still living the euphoria because what we got in these 2 years was so powerful. We didn't have any other supporting network to our specific situation. There's a lot of artistic and cultural networks in European networks, but none of them was supporting these workspaces so full of diverse individuals and businesses. So I think the main thing is to keep our minds about the values and the mission and the vision we have for this network. If you keep it focused on that, certainly it will be more easier to pursue that path that we began. And also we have to listen to the community of members. I think it's interesting. Paul and I were talking before. We have 230 members subscriptions, let's say, in our website at this moment. People that attended to this kind of activities during these 2 years, and now we are entering a second phase where we are asking us to join and to pay membership and to give more than participation, because until now we had all these people participating and taking from the network, and now it's time also to give something for the network, not only some financial contribution, minimal, symbolic, but also some of their time to think and to reshape this network for the future. So now it will be the truth hour in our way, in my case.
I think that's interesting, because I think once you bring money into a membership or a network, then you are changing the nature of that relationship with the person who belongs there. They've given you money, there is an expectation you're going to deliver something. And so to your point about keeping that enthusiasm going, depending on how, is it an annual fee that you're charging? Is it a monthly direct debit? That can all be ways in which you have opportunities to remind people about the fact they are part of that network and of the benefits that they should be getting from the network. And I think, Neil, your model is very well established, it's been going for many years, and that also has a financial aspect to your network members.
Yeah, I totally take what you were saying, actually. I think to me, a lot of the discussion about networks is about the power of converging interests. It's about the converging interest between the members, and it's about the converging interest between the members and those who might fund it. And that is a very strange dynamic sometimes. I think and so it's about what are the communal values, what are the values that you hold in common that bind you together, and how powerful are they, and how strongly will they continue to bind you together. In our case, there were only 6 or 7 of us to start with, and it was 6 or 7 festival directors who then, of course, had their own network of interests and artists and fellow producers feeding into their networks and their festivals. And we did what a lot of people involved in the funding sector do. So we said, well, this is what we want to do. Are there funding organisations that have a converging interest in supporting us in doing that? Creative Europe did, and so we found a way of accessing their funds. But what preserved us, I think, and has continued to preserve us, is a very strong administration. As you say, if a network run by volunteers is a very special and precious thing, and very difficult to maintain. And I think that that's not my experience. I haven't been involved in that sector. Our network, the first thing we did once we started to get the money in is put in place a very strong administration and also a kind of idea, a sort of work practice which was about it's about consensuality. Is that we never had a vote for 14 years up until last year, and then when we did have a vote, it was extremely contentious. Just the very fact we were having a vote, and of course, we wanted to then have a vote to say that we should have no votes. So it was. I think that we sort of then also I had to then make the case to have UK in the network, and then find the funder who is prepared to pay for me to become a member of the network, and that then sets up a whole other sort of a whole other thing going. So I think there are two ways of looking at it, and I can't talk about the voluntary sector at all, but certainly from our side, this is how we managed it. I was involved in another, it's not really a network, an independent street arts network, and it was exactly what it sounds like. It's now called Outdoor Arts UK, and it was a membership organisation. It started off, I think, more or less voluntarily. It had a voluntary administration. It slowly became professionalised. It slowly started to charge more and more for registration to become a member. And then, of course, all the members are balancing value and just saying, well, how much are we actually getting back for the service you're providing? And again, the lesson from, I was involved on the board of that, the lesson we had is that we needed very strong leadership to ensure that the quality of the value that we were giving to our members was got bigger and bigger, and maintained at a very high level. And if anything, and so we brought in a very strong leader, Angus McKenzie, who's very, very good at his job, and he dropped the price and increased the value. And over the course of 2 or 3 years, the membership, the network grew and grew, and it's now very, very powerful, a very strong advocate for its sector, and receives more funding than it did before.
Sounds like a great success story. So I guess with that, it was perhaps a case where they'd started out with a sense of purpose that had perhaps got diluted by the practicalities, and then you'd needed that shift of leadership to come back and say, actually, let's refocus on what is important and why we exist and who we exist for in that sense. John, you've been in lots of networks. Without naming names, are there any networks that spring to mind where you've initially got quite excited about being part of them, and then when you've got a bit more into it, thought, actually, I'm backing away because it's either not delivering what expected or...
Several. I think there's different levels of networks as well. Neil's example at the end is when you've got networks that are national within a nation or a region, I think you're always in difficult territory as to what the focus of that network is, and as the network becomes successful and grows, previous networks that we've been involved in actually become competitors of their members for funding, and start to represent interests of their members when they're sometimes actually representing their own interests rather than the wider membership interests. And there comes a point when a network has a natural shelf life, I think. But the ones that have been most interesting to us, and where we've seen the real value of networks, has been at the international level, at the European level, and at the transnational networks, where there's far less of a notion of competition between members of the networks. They really are about mutual interest and mutual benefit. Often easier to attract funding for them, as we're here talking about Creative Europe. We're currently entering our 6th round of Creative Europe programs in the Nerve Centre, or six separate programs that we've benefited from over the last number of years that are all around network development. Some of them have common partners that have come through it, and those networks are generally the ones, they are focused around funding, so they have a shelf life around that particular project. And if you can take 1 or 2 partners out of that and develop a relationship which leads on to another project, I think that's as good an outcome as you could hope for to get from it. But yes, to come back to the original question, I think quite often there's an awful lot of energy and enthusiasm around an idea for a network, and people are attracted to that, and actually the personal relationships are really strong, or the organisational relationships are really strong, and if you don't have that and you're just coalescing around an idea, I think it can fracture quite quickly. You realise that you've got disparate groups. I don't know if others have been in the situation. Until pre-Brexit, this was something that used to be frustrating to us. Now we can't wait to see if it actually happens again. We used to get contacted quite regularly to be partners in projects because people wanted a UK partner and they wanted a partner from Northern Ireland as well at the last minute. And it really was a leap of faith, and you would sort of pick up a radar fairly quickly to gauge whether this was a partnership that you could really work with, or whether it was very energetic. You would really always look for a couple of seasoned partners in a project, because European programs are bureaucratically stressful at times and do require some agility in terms of financing and managing partner expectations. And that's often where it would fall apart, rather than around the actual core idea. It's around the practical delivery of that shared mission that's more difficult.
The network that we established a smaller network to support Suramodura, our residents in Sri Lanka, and we did it by we were talking to producers across England specifically who were interested in the sort of artist development process that the residency offered, and we found 6 really strong. It's called the Suramodura Residency. It's in Sri Lanka. And we found 6 very, very good producers, and we had our fundraiser then scoured the various funding opportunities that were available, mostly through ACE, but also elsewhere, and came across, by good luck, as much as anything else, there happened to be a fund opening to coincide with the time we wanted to start this network going. And so we got 3 years of funding, and now, it's a very personal question for me, is that this morning I was writing to all our partners and saying, well, we need to move forward. We need to employ somebody whose job is going to be to look to see if there are any other funding opportunities that will coincide, where there's a convergence of interest, as I said before, between what the funders want and what we wanted to do. And so it's really a research job to identify where the money is. And it's not, I haven't been, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I'm truly ancient, as you can see. And I really haven't moved much beyond 4 or 5 principal funders. And there are loads out there. There's loads of trust funds and so on, trusts rather, that we haven't even looked at. So it's a whole industry in itself, I think, really to understand what is out there. But there is a lot. And I'll just go on what you're saying about European funding is a nightmare. The bookkeeper who works for my company hates in situ, which is my most important project. It's just awful. But the benefits are fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a skill to filling out applications for funding and that sort of thing. But it's interesting you say that you tend to work with sort of the same 4 or 5. Do you find once you've got funding from an organisation, it's easier to then go back to them and get more because you proved yourself, or is it just because you're better familiarised with their process?
Yeah, I just remember when I was starting doing this, I used to get really fed up with what I saw as an elite of knowing people, probably my age now or in their 40s or 50s, who just seemed to be getting all the money and just seemed to know where everything was. And I think it's just inevitable that raising funds is a professionalised kind of area of working, and that unfortunately, I think that funders do, of course, they're going to look at track record and they're going to look at people who play the game and use the words and use the language that makes it work for them. And I mean, I don't think that's disputable. I think that is how it tends to work. Because there is a language and there is a converging interest. They have a particular interest in pursuing various policies. And if you talk to British Council, they have a whole set of policies which sometimes converge with the interest of artists and sometimes converge with the interest of various the organisations here, but they're not necessarily the go-to organisation for particular art projects.
Yes, I was saying the same thing. I totally agree. There's consultants and people that works in this particular field that you should talk with, and maybe also try to involve influent partners on it. Like in this case, British Council was one of the partners of this project, and of course, without their experience and influence, the project could never be the same, because the rest of the partners were hub leaders with no credibility on the eyes of the European Commission so far. Now we are trying to make it independently, because now we had a project that was successful, but it would be choosing the right partners could be also of big importance.
Well, so speaking from sort of the Arts Marketing Association perspective, we come across people because either we'll be in the same room as them at events like this and through conversations and somewhat organically, or it will be in watching developments in the sector and you'll see names of organisations coming up and you think actually what they're doing almost aligns with what we're doing, so let's have a conversation around that. And desk-based research, if you're looking for particular resources or things that are going to be of interest to your members, then quite often you'll find things which have been authored by organisations, and then that's another way that you can then think, actually, there might be something here. I don't know, John, do you have a way of filtering or identifying?
You know, it's highly unlikely that nobody else is doing what you do. It's just a matter of finding them. But even if what you're doing is so niche, look for somebody else who's using the same model but possibly in a different art form, or the same art form with a different model, where there will be areas of overlap that you can start to do. And it really is a matter of desk-based research. Google, ask questions, but also raise your own profile. Look at how your messaging is going out to help other people to be able to find you, and do work through. I know we're very lucky in Northern Ireland because we have like a national level of infrastructure in a place that's the size of a county. But work with British Council will point you in the direction of partner searches, and you can see who's out there working in projects, and you'll find out about organisations that you may never otherwise have been aware of. I don't know what other help desks there are around European partners within England, but I'm sure they're there. There might be others here that could advise better on that. But yeah, it's a bit of legwork to try and find out. Work through your local council, whoever your sort of arts and cultural sector are, and ask them, because they may have heard of something. And so one of the other things that I had meant to say earlier on was around the developing of networks. Attending events is a challenging thing, because you've got to do your own day job. You don't always have the luxury of time to attend events like this, and it's about picking and choosing where you can attend events and where possible. What we've always tried to do is if there's an event that's particularly compelling to attend, we'll go to it. If there's one that looks sort of interesting, we'll try to be included, suggest ourselves, put ourselves forward as a speaker, or so that actually, if you're not a great worker of a room, which I most certainly am not, then at least you're getting your message out by speaking as part of the event and part of the conference, and get your own visibility up like that, and people will come to you who are doing sort of fellow travellers.
And if you think that it's not such an event that works in the same area, try to yourself to organize a meetup. Sometimes unexpectedly there's more people interested in your field that you expected in the first place. But gather people in the same room talking about a subject is the most productive way of meeting potential partners. Well, I would say that for the first part of the question, if you have a group of people, organizations, or individuals that have the same, share the same vision, the same mission, and values, and if they are, if they want to share knowledge, if they want to go to the same direction, I believe that a network can be built in a small scale and then grow up. There's a lot of small networks. If you have this synergy, you have a potential network. If you explore it, maybe through social media, you'll reach more and more people that are connected to your and aligned to your values. So if you feel like it's kind of it's go out of your hands, because if people are willing to share and willing to collaborate and connect with each other, you have a network or a potential network. It's a way of exploring it. And I think the social media can be an important role, but maybe in a second stage. In the first stage, this what John was talking about, the events and meet real people physically in spaces and share experiences. I think it's more important than to reach a lot and mass quantity of people that you're not sure if you want to work with them and if you are really aligned. Social media can be a little bit.
I think there's sometimes a danger with social media that
Yeah.
it becomes the network. And what are you as a network offering them beyond the Facebook group that they're all chatting in or whatever? Where's the value that you're adding as your group?
So if you use the social media to make these first events of come and join us, let's discuss these things and see, well, the common points in between these organizations, it would be a good thing.
Anything to add?
Just, I think you sometimes discover that you've got a network when you didn't even intend one. We started 4 years ago organising a symposium for people in Scotland who are interested in making art in public space. And so we invited anybody we thought who might be interested in it. And last Friday we had our 4th annual national symposium. So we decided to call it annual because we did it every year. We decided to call it national because it was in Scotland, for people in Scotland. And it probably is turning into a bit of a network. People come back to it each year. And at some point we might, and we use Facebook and we have Facebook groups and all the rest of it. But it hasn't really emerged as a network yet. But there is clearly a common interest that's being established. And at some point, maybe somebody else, not me, not my organisation, might come in and say, well, this group of people are doing, they have this in common, and I think we should formalise it. And part of the reason we went from being commercial to a charity is we don't want to own things, we want to give them away. And so I'd be very happy if somebody used that symposium to establish a network.
So watch the space.
I guess just on that question of when does the network become a network, the emerging network that we're involved with is around fab labs and digital fabrication spaces in Ireland. And it's probably in the last 6 months when I came to realise that I was probably spending 4 or more hours a week dealing with stuff around projects associated with this that weren't actually our projects, but they belonged to other people. It was like, yes, there's probably a network here now. You know, it's taken up so much time. It's an entity in its own right that we're not putting any effort into generating that interest. It's coming of it. So I think organically at that point when it's eating into your time like that, you think, yeah, this is now a network.